All right, welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. India's leading airlines, Indigo, Air India and SpiceJet are pushing back against the government's new rule mandating 60% free seat selection on flights, triggering regulation versus viability debate. The carriers warn that while the move may appear passenger-friendly, it could actually lead to higher ticket prices across the board. Airlines argue that seat selection fee are a key source of ancillary revenue, helping them offset rising operational costs like fuel and maintenance. Seat selection fee is, it said, are not a bonus. They're part of how the business stays afloat. They say removing this revenue stream will force them to recover losses by increasing base fares, impacting all passengers, not just those opting for paid seats. The industry body has also raised concerns over regulatory overreach, calling the directive an interference in market-driven pricing mechanisms. Airlines have also flagged rising fuel costs, with tensions in West Asia pushing up jet fuel prices and disrupting routes. Airlines say that they are already operating under strain. Meanwhile, the government maintains the rule is aimed at improving passenger rights and ensuring fair access to seating without hidden charges. Generally, airlines charge anywhere from Rs 200 to Rs 2100 domestically to passengers for choosing seats according to their preference. The price depends on a number of factors, including front rows and extra legroom or exit seats. However, amidst the ongoing energy crisis due to the war between the United States, Israel and Iran in West Asia, the government has stepped up to ensure transparency and ease for the flyers. The big question now that arises is, will cheaper seats today translate into costlier tickets tomorrow? Will free seat selection plan actually end up being counterproductive is the big question. Let's talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the program is Mr. Sanjay Lazar, aviation expert. Dr. Vandana Singh, also aviation expert, joins us on the show. Captain Kesari Singh, former civil aviation director and DGCA examiner. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also with us on the program to talk more about this. All right, Sanjay, I'll begin with you. Well, the airlines say that the base fare is going to increase. So even when oil, I remember, was around $65 to $70 a barrel, flying to Goa, in non-heydays and non-holiday days was about 10,000 quids one way. And the real cost for the airline was not more than 1,200 rupees. So they've had their heydays. They have made merry. In fact, some of the routes and the exorbitant pricing, which has been in fact regulated by the airlines, is subject of debate. It has been flagged in the past many a times by passengers and bodies at large, but nothing has been done about it. Why is it that when passenger preference and convenience comes into the picture, airlines always have a problem? And everybody knows what they're charging for at this point in time is not fair. It is not fair pricing. It's monopolistic pricing because of limited airlines in our country.
Thank you, Vineet, for having me on your show. Good evening to your viewers also. This is one time I'm completely with you, and I'm with the government. I'm usually against the government and the DGCA, but a couple of very important points you made there. Goa, 10,000 rupees. Then every time there's a fuel hike or a price hike, the new high becomes the low benchmark, and then it starts going up. Now, the other important thing is we need to understand this move by the government emanated originally from the PIL filed by Mr. Lakshmi Narayan in the Supreme Court of India, where the bench made a mention that it would be nice if we had more free seats available without extra cost. Obviously, the airlines were not watching the ball. That is a PIL he has filed during the, much before the Indigo crisis, on the monopolistic behavior of airlines and how they, misuse their power. Okay, the second thing is there is a cartelization and fares are really unaffordable. You yourself just said, 400 rupees to 2,100 rupees. Sometimes it's 10 to 20% of an airfare, just the seat charge. So I'm completely with the government on this. Yes, they should meet and find a middle way.
Sanjay, when the Indigo crisis was happening. Yeah, let me in fact ask Vandana the same question. Vandana, when the Indigo crisis was happening, I was stuck in Bangalore and I could not find any airline to take me home. The last option that I had was from Bangalore to Delhi was to book a business class ticket, which cost me around 80,000 rupees to fly from Bangalore to Delhi for a 2-hour flight. Air India had no qualms, no guilt about charging so much in the time of need. And that's exactly what these airlines have been doing for decades now. And when some regulation which is pro-consumer is being facilitated and talked about, they get into this panic mode. I'm still very, very upset about the fact that Indigo was charged only 20 crores for the mess they created in December 2025. They should have been punished to the tune of 500 plus crores.
Absolutely, Vineet. Firstly, a very good evening to you and good evening to all the NewsX viewers. What we saw with Indigo and what we saw with Air India as well at that time when the crisis happened in December was complete abuse of dominance, like we just spoke of. And coming to this move, you're absolutely right. What about the passenger rights? And this is just a basic move. We are just looking at a 60% free seat selection option, which is standard seats. You're not here even looking at the ancillary services. I mean, come on. Where are the seats with extra leg space? The front row seats, the emergency row seats, the premium seats, the business, the first. Nothing is touched, only the 60%. And 40% is absolutely there in their control, with all the ancillary services which start from the moment you get off. Why even get off the car? Let's say booking a car, getting off it, moving towards the check-in counter, priority check-in, your excess baggage, your meals, your priority boarding, all of it, and the seats. So I mean, there is so much of ancillary services out there for the airlines to make enough. Anyway, they work on a dynamic pricing model, as you know, Vineet, and they keep regulating their fares from time to time. And at this point of time, when we see the entire West Asian crisis over there, we are not saying no to fuel surcharge. There is fuel surcharge, there is war risk surcharge, there is so many other surcharges for the operational costs that they are having to bear for flying X amount of hours extra. So why this question or why this objection from them? I am totally with the government on this, because basic airfare, basic air travel has to be made affordable, Vinny, while allowing the airlines to monetize the premium options, and they anyway make money everywhere, right from start to end. And you yourself also experienced something at a time when there was a crisis. So I don't know why make such hue and cry over something like this. This is standard. It is just 60% of the standard seats. 40% is open to them. I think it's a welcome move, it's a transparent move, and it is about passenger and consumer rights. Over to you, Vinny.
You're quite right. And Gautam, how are you looking at this? To play the devil's advocate, I can say there have been a lot of problems that airlines in the past have faced in our country. A lot of them shut down because of a very hostile environment in terms of profitability. Is that an argument that can be used to offset the monopolistic behavior of these airlines?
Well, I think the timing of this is a little unfortunate. There's been a sudden bump up of prices of fuel. In particular, there are uncertainties with regard to airspace and flights. So the airlines are a little tense, along with the rest of us, while this war is going on in the Middle East. I think they've overreacted. The airlines have overreacted by protesting quite a reasonable idea of leaving 60% of the seats without surcharges. But I think it's more a reaction of the time than, that the government is being unreasonable. The government does regulate airfares every time it gets out of hand. but usually after the fact. As you experience, by the time the government gets in on it, you've already had to pay all kinds of fares if you insist on flying on the day that you had originally intended. So, all in all, I think maybe they should go into a discussion on this and play it out over a period of time till this war ends. Vinny.
Sanjay, we don't know how the war is going to in fact shape up in the next few weeks. Do you think that it's going to be absolute turmoil for passengers if they have to shell out more money than they already have been shelling out in the last few years when it comes to popular routes within India and abroad as well? May, June, July is the time when schools are off. There are holidays in our country, it's summer holidays, and a lot of people plan to go outside of India. Is that likely to be impacted as a result of what we are seeing at this point in time? And do you think that also could have been a reason why the government said that you cannot have these surcharges for these seats, because you have to in fact create that balancing act?
Well, Vineet, there's no two ways about the fact that the foreign travel will be impacted. Prices are already almost double because of the bucket system and the yield management that they're applying. I was in fact booking a ticket for somebody Delhi, Vancouver in the end of February, and then 2 weeks later they'd not bought it. 2 weeks later it had tripled in price. So that's already there. It's going to get worse because I don't see this war playing out easily, very clearly. I can see oil pushing 120, going to 140. ATF will double from where it is today. So you're going to see tough times for airlines. You're going to see difficult times for passengers. Now this is where it's pinching the airlines, because domestically is still a very large chunk of their operational market. And if you remove 60% of the seat bucket tickets, the pricing, you're going to hurt them very hard. So maybe they should have talked with the government and said, let's put this on pause for a month or two. And I also believe airlines must self-regulate themselves, not flog passengers. And I remember I was on the show when you came back from Bangalore and you paid that 80-odd thousand. And these are things they should all control themselves. They have not done it. And I think it's time, because otherwise this is going to get into a government versus regulator versus airline battle. And I can see at some point regulation of fares coming in to curb all this nonsense. At one point, airlines wouldn't want that again. Okay, they might just deregulate. They've deregulated sales of ancillary revenues. They might just start regulating it again. There's no law preventing it. There was a Supreme Court case, but this is also in the Supreme Court. So both airlines and the government need to tread very carefully here. This is important, but the passenger is the number one factor who must be looked after, in my view. We have a passenger charter that is not worth the paper it's written on. There is very little protection for our passengers, and we need to do that first. That's my primary concern right now.
Vandana, for the sake of comparison, in the ongoing war, when there were a lot of passengers from all over the world who were stuck in Dubai and the UAE, they were well taken care of by the airlines, the respective airlines that they had decided to fly with. Whether it was Etihad, whether it was Emirates, they all volunteered and took care of the passengers, booked hotels for them, kept them busy and told them every update as it came in. Airline is a service industry, but the hospitable nature of what happened in Dubai is obviously something which will be compared to what happened in India as well in December 2025 with Indigo. So obviously one thing is off the shelf, and we already know it. Airlines are not into this game to please the passengers or provide a service. It's only money that matters to them.
Absolutely, Vineet. You hit the nail over there. You look at DXP, you look at Dubai, you look at the way and professionally this has been managed, and see the situation in comparison as to what happened and how you also suffered with the Indigo crisis and the abuse of dominance that happened with two monopolistic carriers over here. So definitely, and when you look at seat selection all over the world, please look internationally. Qatar Airways, Thai Airlines, or Virgin Atlantic, they all have free seating options. And here you're not counting the premium economy or the first class or the business or the ones with leg space or the exit row seats, emergency seats. So I don't know, as I said, why is there so much hue and cry? Yes, the timing could have been different, but then please also tell me, we are living in times of war. When one is happening, there is another one happening on the parallel. When one subsides and something is ongoing. So this situation of crisis will not go anywhere. Yet, it shows it shows the mettle of the airline or the airlines to really regulate themselves, be disciplined, be professional, and be there for the customer, the consumer, the client. And nobody is there for the customer here. They are all for themselves. And as I said, Vineet, they are making money from A to Z. Everything from the moment you start to the time you board, to the time you sit, to the time you exit, everything the airline is making money on. So definitely, I believe it should be regulated, it should be self-regulated, and a sense of professionalism has to come in. The aviation minister already has announced three more players coming into our skies to finish this abuse of dominance in the Indian skies. And I believe there has to be some sort of balance of all sorts. It cannot go in an unprofessional way as it has been going on so far. Over to you, Vinay.
Vandana, in the same breath, before I go to Gautam, I'm going to pose the same question that I asked Gautam as well. Do you think airlines are circumspect and careful? In fact, to the point, even vary that India has been, a hostile market because of a number of reasons. Be it the regulation, the DGCA, the exorbitant parking fees and whatnot, and the licensing, and that is the reason a number of these airlines have folded up. Naresh Goyal, Vijay Mallya, obviously in trouble at this point in time because they were not able to, in fact, cope up or maneuver the system and make their airlines profitable. Do you think that is the past which also haunts some of these airlines, and that is why you have these jittery movements?
Vineet, if you ask me personally, I think this no longer is something that's haunting them. It's rather become an excuse, if you ask me. Because those were the times, that time, and these are the times now. A lot has changed. A lot has come in. A lot of positives have come in. We have to see the positives that have come in as we move towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, where it is the PM's dream to see Hawai Chappal se Hawai Jahaz, as you know. But this is not something that should haunt them anymore because they had the cash outflow going elsewhere. We can have a debate on that, which was used for other things rather than for the airline itself or upgrading the airline and taking care of their staff and their fleet, etc., etc. That was never done. But yes, there has been red tapeism, there has been bureaucratic, roadblocks here when airlines want to come and invest. But I believe things are getting very transparent now, things are getting regulated now, and we have to be optimistic about the fact that we are looking at brighter skies right now for the aviation industry. What we need is regulation. What we need is professionalism. What we need is discipline. This is what we need. If we get all of this in, I think way to go. Our domestic consumer consumption is so high. I think we are looking at a very good domestic output, and at the same time we are looking at a very good international output as well. So I think we cannot compare those times right now. We have to stick to the present, and the present, a lot has changed, really. Over to you.
Gautam, do you think that more competitors coming into the market is perhaps going to be the answer to the woes of the passengers, and in the same breath of the airlines as well?
Well, theoretically, certainly, Vineet, but the problem is there aren't enough aircraft, there aren't enough deliveries. It's a very expensive business. Leasing aircraft is also very difficult. When we talk of the UAE Airlines,
How about
let's
competence,
remember
Gautam? How about competence? How about not sending the wrong aircraft to Canada?
that is a technical mistake, as Sanjay was pointing out. There's some kind of filing you have to do, and you haven't done it, so they won't let you land there. I've heard of a pilot who turned the plane back, not one of ours, but an international airline, after 2 hours because he realized he hadn't brought his passport. So these things happen, and they are, I think, one-off events that cannot. But when anything with regard to anything like this happens with Air India, you just watch it and look at the news as one more event piling on top of another. They've had a very bad run for more than 2 years, and it's extremely unfortunate that they haven't been able to harness the airline and sort out 100. The reports like most of their planes have something wrong with them is shocking. I certainly won't travel Air India for love or money. I'm not going to do it because it's just unsafe. You don't know what you're playing with. So this kind of incompetence, as you rightly said, is unacceptable. But it isn't something that, in principle, can't be sorted. It's just that the people in charge and the way they've gone about it has not been adequate. And ever since, the assumption was when Tata's took it over, it'll run it better than the government. But no, that's not how it's turned out. Indigo, the private airline, look, till lately was a perfectly good airline, making profits, etc. It's gone off the rails a bit. I have every confidence it'll come back into something that is viable and good and responsive to the customer. It's funny. I've never paid for an extra for an upgraded seat or whatever it is, but quite often, just by themselves, they put me next to the aisle, or they put me, next to the exit or the place with leg room, because that's what they had for people who hadn't signed on for, better seats.
That's because you're a journalist, Gautam. That's because you're a journalist, and they're scared of you. All right. Before I end, I want to quickly, pick Sanjay's brain on a couple of points. Sanjay, quick answers to what Gautam said. That faux pas with Air India, taking the wrong plane and turning back mid-air is also something very embarrassing. And with Air India, you can expect anything to happen. And what happened to that report, Sanjay, that was supposed to come out after that Ahmedabad crash? It's been over 6 months.
Well, the first thing is about the Canada 777-200 LR. As Gautam is right, it was a question of a regulation which applies to foreign air operators. It's an FAOC permission which was taken for the 777-300ER for that particular route, and not, the 777-200 LR. Obviously, it slipped through the crack and this took off. Very embarrassing, huge loss. 50-60 tons of fuel, whole lot of money down the drain. They'll have to live that one down. I hope they get to the bottom of it sooner rather than later. The second important thing is, yes, about the sad tragedy of the 171. We're still waiting, but I don't personally expect the report to be ready even till the first anniversary, because I sense there's a lot of still waters running deep here, and we don't know which way the wind is blowing. There's a lot of skullduggery going on in foreign press, Indian press, AAIB, FA, NTSB. There's too much going on there, and I don't think I just hope it doesn't become like the China incident where we don't see a report for 5-6 years, because I think we all need to put it behind us and move forward, in aviation. With regard to the general subject which Vandana ji and Gautam spoke, I do believe it's time for the airlines and the government to start thinking together in terms of the passenger. Very important. We are not seeing that right now, and that's very important.
Fair
Needs
enough.
to be done. Hope, they can sit across two sides of the same table and talk to each other, not at each other, and bring the passenger in between, because I don't see any passenger associations, nobody talking about it, nobody fighting for them. There's nobody in the little guy's corner. One of these days, Vineet, you and I have to get together and make an association.
You're absolutely right. An industry body is needed for the passengers as well. We've run out of time, but it's always a pleasure having all of you on this very important discussion. We take a short break. Be right back.